there's not many of you, might know that I'm a big fan of Denmark. It's a lovely little country, and one of the reasons I'm most keen on Denmark is, in fact, its television and cinema. They have this brilliant TV series you might have seen. They've actually created a genre which is called Scandinoir, Scandinavian noir, and I can only recommend watching a couple, either The Killing or The Bridge. It's a kind of dark, nail-biting, very tense suspense, packed with all kind of action, and it also touches upon all kinds of controversial aspects, such as miscarriage of justice, environmental challenges, corporate power, corporate abuse. So pretty sexy stuff. But it's not the subject of my speech today, but I'm gradually zooming in, because I'll be talking to you about Copenhagen, a city which I was lucky enough to visit a couple of times over the past few years, and I thought it was brilliant. It's a historic city. It has a wonderful architecture, but it also has very clean air. It has wonderful canals that you can actually even swim in. There are people who can swim to go to work in Copenhagen. They've made the water so clean in their canals. And it's a city that indeed aims to be carbon neutral in a couple of years. And if it reaches its objective, which apparently it will be able to do, it will be the first in the world. Now, an apparently completely unrelated question: does anybody of you ski? Unrelated because clearly you know that Denmark is flat, and so it's not known for its alpine skiing. And secondly, my question is, would you consider skiing anywhere close to an incinerator? Because the answer to these questions is, A, you can actually, well, you will be able to ski in Denmark soon, and the only place where you will be able to do so is on top of an incinerator. And I hope I've created enough suspense now. I'll be telling you all about this incinerator. So, as I mentioned earlier, Denmark is an example for everybody to follow when it comes to environmental policies. Not only does it want to go carbon neutral, but it only actually has 4% of the waste it produces that goes into landfills. In other words, only 4% of its waste is not recycled in one way or another. 42% is recycled, and 54%, sorry, I just told you nonsense there. So 42% is recycled, 54% is turned into energy, so only 4% goes into landfill. In other words, nothing comes of it. And within this framework, there's a Danish company which has decided not only to set new standards for environmental performance, but indeed to redefine the very relationship between industrial facilities and people who live near them. And it's doing so as part of a project, the one I mentioned earlier, this Amagerbakke. It's actually an incinerator, but they like to call it a waste-to-energy plant, with two hyphens, waste-to-energy plant, which is in Copenhagen and which is currently being constructed. And as I mentioned earlier, this plant will become a skiing destination for the citizens of Copenhagen. And the architects behind this insane plan, called BIG, have decided that people won't only just be skiing there, but they can practice climbing, for example. And they're going to be building the tallest climbing wall in Europe. It's going to be 80 meters tall. So if you've got any of those Spider-Man skills, you know where to go for your next holiday. And they will also have mountain bike trails and all kinds of other kind of sports that you'll be able to do on top of the incinerator. Now, I know it sounds strange to you, but it certainly sounded strange to me. I mean, surely an incinerator, it can't be that big. Well, this, according to the description, is in fact massive. It's the size of 3 football fields. But still, it's not just about sport. Sport is one of the interesting byproducts of this plant. As I said, it's initially about burning waste to make energy out of it. And it should be fully operational in 2017, and when it will be operational, it will be processing 400,000 tons of waste per year with what they describe as 99% energy efficiency. In other words, from the waste, 99% is made good use of. So either they obtain energy, or they obtain water, even metal, and even ash. Ash will be then used in agriculture. And the energy that is created from the facility will then be used for district heating, and 160,000 homes will be warmed using this energy, and electricity will be provided to 62,500 homes. This is known as cogeneration, when you're creating both heat and electricity from the same plant. And one of the interesting things is also that the residents, and you can imagine in a typical situation, if you're living, I don't know, somewhere in the countryside, say, I don't know, Waterloo, for example, and somebody says, so people, you'll be glad to know we'll be building an incinerator next to your house in a couple of years. Everybody will be up in arms, take to the streets, say, no way, not in my backyard. Well, not the Danes. The Danes are delighted. They're delighted because they have seen what kind of policy has been implemented over the past years, and they trust the government. They trust the government, they trust these architects to do something that will make sense, that will not pollute the air around them, or not only to a very small extent, and indeed provide all these wonderful sports facilities so that they can make the most of them. Now, as I just said now, of course, there is some kind of emissions that come from this plant, because you might be in Denmark, they might be the most advanced architects in the world, they might have state-of-the-art technologies, but they're still burning stuff. And so some kind of carbon dioxide will be created. But the Danes being the Danes, they don't want to hide this truth. They're not going to try and sweep it under the carpet like you do with a nasty secret in a respectable family. They choose to put it on display. And how do they do that? Well, it's considered to be the sort of the finishing touch on this plant, once everything will be working, so that they make the public aware of the fact that there is a carbon footprint coming from this plant, albeit very small. They have developed a technology which creates a smoke ring coming out of one of the chimneys for every ton of CO2 which is emitted. So every time there's a full ton that has been emitted, you'll see a little smoke ring, just to remind you that it's not completely carbon neutral, but that they did all they could to contain emissions as much as possible, and probably also to remind you that all in all, it's still a pretty good environmental feat. So, back in the day, Shakespeare said, in the play Hamlet, something is rotten in the heart of Denmark. But it's fair to say that unlike elsewhere in Europe, where rubbish is left to rot in open-air landfills or disposed of, creating massive carbon footprint, here too the Danes are leading the way. It's fair to say the Danes have their share of rot, but nobody burns it quite like the Danes.
I'd like to see a ski slope, actually.
Sorry?
I'd like to see a ski slope.